Jim could come on that, and he was, he's part of that history as well. But it was horrible. About 3,000 people died as a result of it. Thousands more were exiled within Sri Lanka and but outside Sri Lanka as well. And then that was the turning point for the Tamil youth. They said, okay, we cannot rely on this government to do anything. Or at the same time, we cannot rely on the Tamil bourgeois parties to do anything. So they decided to arm themselves to defend themselves. It was a good decision actually. It's not a bad decision, but it's some of the things they talked about. All of them, all the militant group that formed at the time, they're on the left. All of them are left. And it's just inevitable, whether they are left or not, whatever they believe, whatever they do, they have to be left in order to get support at the time. And majority, the declaration, they declared, almost all the militant groups declared they wanted to establish socialist Tamil, the separate socialist country. And also some of the documents, the previous documents they published at the time, is quite incredible to read at this time. They were all talking about, establishment of this abolition of the exploitation by man, and establishment of socialist society where the means of production is controlled by the masses, poor masses. And they're also, they said we will introduce the cap on how much people can earn, and all sort of things. It was quite an incredible mood at the time, influenced heavily by what happened in Cuba and around the world as well. And they're also quite carefully, as another important point is that they carefully distinguished the establishment as their enemy. And they didn't attack the singular masses, singular workers. They were very clear that they were on the side. They appealed to the singular workers. And quite a few young people joined the kind of a Chauvinist organization now. Uses Marxist phraseology called JBP at the time. I didn't have time to go into that details of the history. I mean, if people could come up on it as well. But what followed then is that when they took control, it's not simple, but in a way, in order to explain simply, that the collapse of Stalinism had a huge impact as well, and also the influence of India and supplying the weapons, and also turning some of those organizations into kind of something that fight for them, their interest. So the Indian interest also began to have an influence among some of the militants. And also the collapse of Stalinism meant that there's major setback, ideological setback for socialism, which means some of the movements have lost what they actually argued quite some time. They appealed to the workers of the world as well, and so on and so forth. That was a setback just after that. And also in 1986 a movement emerged called LTTA, Tamil Tigers in short, and they attacked the rest of the movement, took control of the area, which is a horrific attack on the rest of the Tamil movement. Some of them are really good activists and socialists, and they hunted them down. And they also made series of several mistakes. They stopped appealing to the singular working masses, and also instead they trusted this thing called IC. They talk about the international community. So which means what it means is that when they say international community, they just appeal to the international governments and the international bodies. That's all they did. They just completely, it's a right shift from what they've been appealing. Before, just a few years back, they wrote a document appealing to the youth who were meeting, international youth movement meeting in Cuba. From there, they moved to appealing to all the governments, not only the governments of Cuba, the neo-colonial world, Cuba, all these governments, but also they've given up on that as well. They appealed to the United States, the UK, and etc., etc. Quite incredible when you think about it. Another major mistake was in 1990 is that about 75,000 Muslims were asked to leave North and East, the traditional homeland for the Muslim Tamil-speaking Muslims by the LTTA, on the suspicion that they were giving information to the Sri Lankan government. That was incredible. That was a horrible thing to do, and I can go on about how horrible it is and how people felt about it. It was kind of an ethnic cleansing. That's the major setback even within the LTT movement. These young people who joined the LTT, where they joined, majority of them, some of them have political understanding, some of them didn't. But whatever it is, they joined for the reason that they want to fight for the better of the people. So there was a question about within the ranks itself. There was a question. There was a lot of revolts suppressed within the LTT as well. It's emerged in 2002 in a bigger fashion. When they had this small peace process, the eastern commander of the LTTE split away from LTT. That was a major setback for the LTT. And then he split away, but he didn't have any other option other than joining the government forces. And also, he joined the Tamil Tigers as a young teenager, and the only thing he trained is just to fight. He's not politically educated. Those cadres are not politically educated, to understand what is what, etc., etc. And the basic fundamental rule is missed. So, quite, soon as they left the Tigers, it's quite easy for them to just join the government and do whatever they want to do. They didn't see that these are the oppressors. They didn't see. They missed the fundamental principle, that is how to fight the oppression. If you are fighting oppression, don't actually work with the oppressors. Yeah. It's a fundamental thing that is missed in the history. And unite with all the oppressed class and oppressed people to fight the oppressors. That is the fundamental thing that they missed throughout the history. And with that boast, with renewed hope that they can attack, they can win the war after the split, the Rajapaksa government came to power just solely for the first time, completely voted based on singular majority vote, because the LTT boycotted the election. That was another major mistake. And our Socialist Party's sister party in Sri Lanka, United Socialist Party, warned against it at the time as well, publicly said, it's a madness to do that. Even actually the secretary made a call to one of the LTT commanders saying, you're killing you, you're going to kill yourself, what are you doing, don't let the people vote. And that is exactly what happened. And immediately after he got elected, he started this war. And we have to understand, it's also after the 9/11, and also the so-called, the phraseology of this fighting terrorism. So they used the same tactics that George Bush used in terms of propaganda and so on in Iraq, and then started to attack. About 500,000 people are cornered into a really tiny corner. It was a horrific attack and bombed constantly. It's kids, children, everybody there, and it's the indiscriminate bombing with hospitals and everywhere. And when one of the major hospitals, there was only one hospital in there. When it was bombed, the defense minister was asked a question by the Western media, and his answer is either you with us or with the terrorist. If anything within that region is bomb, we can't bomb anything. That was just blatantly thing that he said, and that they still carry on. And after that came a major defeat for the LTT. The leader of the Tigers, as well as the leading members, and they all got killed in the last battle. About 20,000 people died during that time. And we have to say that, of course, we don't necessarily say that, the LTT should be blamed for all the killings and etc. But they should be blamed for part of the killing that happened at the time, because they did keep some of those people, from escaping. So, and that is also partly resulted in a huge number of deaths. And also the Sri Lankan government is the major thing that we blame for the killings and the disaster that followed. And